Hi guys, this is Monica from Huckleberry Mountain Botanical School of Herbalism. I wanted to go live today to talk about growing calendula, harvesting, drying, storage, things like that. And then tomorrow I'm going live. Unfortunately, I can't go at 11 again. I've got a meeting schedule, so I will either be going at around 10 or 12:30. So if you have any input on that, what would work better for you, let me know. And this is Pacific time. Before I start, I want to just put out a reminder about our thoughts. I know that this doesn't have anything to do with growing calendula, but one of the things that I bump into a lot is health issues related to our thinking. And I know it's difficult sometimes to associate what we think with the actual health of our body, but it does make a difference. And so throughout the day, it's just good to evaluate what you're thinking and what your beliefs are about yourself, about your world, about your life, and try to make small shifts and changes throughout the day, talking positively to yourself and believing you can do things that maybe are challenging, and just working on improving that part of your life, because that does make a difference even in how our immune system works, how our digestive system works, all of that. Our thoughts make a difference. So just throwing it out there, because I've just bumped into quite a bit recently with health challenges and realizing that there are some serious thought problems going on. So evaluate your own thoughts. And if you aren't aware of your thoughts, then maybe you need to sit and think for a while about what your thoughts are. Think on your thoughts. Okay, so let's get to calendula. First of all, calendula is one of the easiest plants to grow. So if you are new to gardening, this is an awesome plant to select. And it's beautiful. It works as a companion plant because it does attract some insects. So you might have some issues with that when you when you cultivate the flowers. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So what kind of soil will calendula grow in? Pretty much any. It'll grow in soil that's not very good at all. I mean, it's kind of more dead soil, and fortunately it grows really well in my garden. Even though my garden, we're still working on improving organic matter and soil life and all of that. The one thing that it needs, though, is it needs to be well draining. If it is filled with clay, if you have a lot of clay in your soil, then maybe if you want to grow calendula and many other plants, by the way, that don't like to sit in boggy water, they don't like their roots to be really wet, then maybe one thing you can do is create some sort of wall, whether it's with bricks or wood or whatever, and just kind of build your soil up a little bit so that the roots can come up out of that kind of heavy clay, wet soil. It just hold on to so much moisture. So it won't prefer that, but it really isn't picky about where it grows. So that's a big plus. It does like to be watered well, but it doesn't like to sit in water. So it's that good watering and then allowing it to drain away. So where I've positioned mine is actually at the bottom of my hugelkultur bed. So when we water from the top with a drip irrigation, and it slowly works its way down. I have it kind of, so the hugelkultur bed is like this, and I have it in this little part down here. So the water comes down and it sits there a little bit longer than the top of the hugelkultur bed, which is where I've put kind of my more dry loving herbs like lavender and wormwood, and what else do I have up there? I think licorice root. But calendula likes a little bit more moisture, but again, not sitting in moisture. It also prefers full sun. And a lot of books you'll read, even some ones that I recommend, which one I really recommend for beginner growers is this. I actually have a review on my website in my blog about this book. It has some really awesome information, and it's put together in a way that's super easy to use. And, you know, according to all these different things. So if you're the kind of person who wants to garden according to color, it's in there. If you want to garden according to, you know, what you're going to use it for, maybe cooking or whatever, it has that information in there as well. So that's a book that I totally recommend if you're getting into, especially if you're just getting into growing herbs. But let's see, what was I talking about? Oh, sun. Yeah. Okay. So with sun, it wants full sun. And like I said, some books will say, oh, part sun is fine, but really it will do okay in part sun, but it won't grow as robustly, if that's a word. I think it is. So if you want a really nice, healthy, good morning, Katie, calendula plant, then choose somewhere that it's getting a minimum of 6 hours and preferably closer to 8 hours of sun a day. And then one of the best ways to keep calendula flowering through the entire season and even past your first freeze, when you get into deep, deep freeze, it won't be flowering anymore, but it will survive even those first few frosts at night. You want to do that is to be plucking the flowers off. And sometimes this requires daily, like going out every day. Once it starts flowering, popping the flowers off. And they're usable fresh. They're wonderful in salads, and they, you know, can color cream cheese or cheese balls just by pulling the petals off. You're not going to get as much medicine, but there is medicine in the petals. But adding them to salads or adding them to soups, this is called poor man's saffron, because saffron is so expensive. But, oh, thank you. I'm glad that you could make it, Katie. But it's awesome because you can actually throw it in with rice and get kind of that yellow rice without having to have the expense of saffron, which is really, really expensive because they take, you know, they're taking the little filament off of flowers and using that. It's a particular kind of flower, and I can't remember the name of it right now. But this will do just as well. Apparently, and this is, I don't know, a story that goes around with all herbalists, King Henry VIII was really big into having colorful food that was really, really flavorful. And so his chefs depended on calendula petals to add a lot of color to the food that they cooked for him, which is pretty interesting. I have heard too that, I've never done it, and I plan on trying it this time, that people do eat the leaves and they'll throw them into soups and salads, and it adds kind of a spicy pungency. So I'm curious to do that. So apparently they are usable as food as well, which is pretty awesome, which means more of the plant is being used. Okay, so we've talked about soil type. Again, you want well-draining soil, but if you're choosing a location right now, choose somewhere that's going to get a decent amount of water, but that allows for draining. And if you have other plants that you're watering more consistently than, let's say, things like yarrow, which don't need that much water, or wormwood, again, doesn't need as much water, choose a location that already has plants that are getting consistent watering, that has good draining soil. And if you're using it as a companion plant, tomatoes, next to tomatoes is really good because it does attract some of the insects that would normally go onto the tomato. Now, that can sometimes make your flowers a little frustrating because you pick them off and you see all these little black bugs. One of the tricks that I started using this last summer, because chamomile does the same thing, it attracts thrips. I started putting my chamomile flowers onto my white table, and the thrips started jumping off onto the white. It was really interesting. Then I was able to gather up my flowers, and most of the bugs were gone and they were on my table instead. So that's something you can do with your calendula. I did not have a problem with thrips on my calendulas last year. I only did with my chamomile. But if you have a white table or get a white tablecloth, throw your flowers on there, make sure it's out of direct sun, and just give them a few minutes to sort of gather off of your flowers, because you really don't, especially with calendula, if you pick the fresh flowers, you're going to feel a real stickiness, and that's the resin. And that resin is very medicinal and it's good. So you really don't want to bring your calendula flowers in after growing them and harvesting and doing all this work and then rinsing all of the good stuff off. So I normally don't rinse my things. I'll shake them, or unless they're really, really bad, and then if you have to, you have to, but I prefer not to. Now, of course, if you're just going to use the petals, then that's fine. You can rinse and then pull the petals off and put them into whatever. Tomorrow, I'm going to show you a really easy vegetable soup that this recipe is coming out of that book that I just showed you, that I have that review on my blog. And it's just a vegetable soup, and it does include calendula flowers. Yes, I know. I could repeat myself completely, but I won't. But yes, you can watch from the beginning, Katie. So let's see. We've talked about soil. We've talked about water. Likes water, just not sitting in water. Sun, full sun. It will grow in less, but it doesn't prefer it. And let's see. Harvesting. So like I said, if you want to keep it flowering, pull those flowers every day. Do it after it is dried from the dew, but not, during the full sun. You really want to do it in the morning, just after the dew has dried, and they should be fully open. Some herbalists will pull the flowers before they're fully open. I don't prefer to do that. I like them fully opened. However, do not let it go to seed. If you let it go to seed, you're going to slow down the flowering for the rest of the season, because it goes, oh, I've done my job. I've gone to seed, and now I don't have to worry about blooming anymore. So if you want continual flowers through the season, just keep picking those flowers off. It is almost heartbreaking for me, because they're so pretty. They are so pretty. And I walk out and I love seeing those orange, and it's amazing. They're a variety of color, even on the same plant. Some of them will be kind of a yellow, and others will be a distinct orange, and still others a real dark orange color, and it's pretty amazing. So pulling those flowers off is a little bit heartbreaking for me, but I also understand if I stop pulling those colors or those flowers off, I'm not going to get the same return on each plant. So pull the flowers off, and keep doing that. What I end up doing is, near the end of the season, I let some of my flowers go to seed. And that's where I'm like, okay, I've pulled enough off this plant. I'm just going to let it do its thing so that it can replicate itself for next season. And inevitably it has. It has spread out a little bit. And so in the beginning of the spring, when it starts coming up, you can go in there and you can thin it out a little if they're growing too close together. But the other thing is, you can propagate by seed inside if you want to. It just doesn't really need it. It's one of those seeds that needs no pre-treatment in order to propagate. And it takes 8 to 10 days for it to sprout. And then it takes around 6 weeks or so before you'll start seeing the blooms and you'll start being able to harvest. It may be sooner for you, depending on your weather and your sunshine and things like that. But it takes here about 6 weeks before I start seeing blooms on plants that have come up. Let's see, drying. How I dry my calendula flowers is using my dehydrator. Do not use a dehydrator unless you can keep the temperatures below. I like to keep them below about 105. And on mine, which is the, Lindy, well, the time you tell me, I'm gonna be past this. Anyway, it's the square dehydrator, so you can pull things out. That has a setting for herbs that's actually at 95, and that's perfect. And just keep pulling it out. Like after about 24 to 48 hours, you can pull the dehydrator tray out and start checking for doneness. And by doneness, I mean you want them to be crispy. You don't want any give on your flowers. If there is give, that means there's moisture left. And if there's moisture left, when you put it in the jar and you close it up, you're going to get mold and things are going to rehydrate and it's not going to be good. So whenever you're drying anything, you want to make sure that it's fully dried. Okay, and it's going to take a little longer, especially if you keep the green on, which I want you to do, because that green's a little thick and it's pretty moist. And again, you have that resin. So really, when you use the dehydrator, keep it at that low temperature and allow it to fully dry. Once it's dried, it should be the same color. It should not drastically change color. It should be the same color and it will have just a slight scent. Calendula doesn't have a super, super strong scent when it's dry. And to store it correctly, you want to put it in a jar, tighten it up, put your dates on there, and then keep it somewhere where it's out of direct sun. Also out of massive changes in temperature. So don't choose a garage, even if you don't have sunlight in there. If you go from, you know, a hot summer to a cold winter, now you're going to have these drastic temperature changes, which are going to deplete the medicinal properties in it. So keep it somewhere where it's temperature regulated and you're out of direct sun. And then it should keep for quite a while. The best way to check to make sure that your herb is still good, and I did a video on this before, but you know, open it up. It should have that slight scent, but it also should be, that color should still be vibrant, and it should still look a lot like the flower that you picked. If it doesn't, then, and you know, it's getting dull or it's losing a lot of color, then that's probably not one that you want to use. If you are buying calendula from, you know, some herb store or, you know, herb grower, one thing you need to be aware of is that, like I said, the colors can vary. You can go all the way down to this yellowy color, all the way up to a vibrant, like almost reddish orange color. So when you get it, if it's yellow, you don't go, oh, well, you know, it's bad. You know, it looks dull and light. That could have been its original color. The best way to guarantee that you have good is, you know, to smell it a little bit. It should have a slight scent, but also understand your grower and know your grower. And if there's a number, which there should be, you can call them and say, hey, you know, can you tell me kind of what color this was to begin with, and when it was harvested and stuff, because that will make a big difference. It should have been harvested within the last three months or so, maybe 4. Flowers don't keep as long. So, you know, you're talking about a year. And so it's perfect with the calendula because you can be using it fresh and dehydrating it. And then hopefully by the time you're running out is when calendula is coming up again the next year. So you have this perpetual supply of calendula just from growing it in your own garden. And it is a super, super easy and very rewarding plant to grow. And it's a pollinator attractor as well because it's just so bright and nice, and it's just beautiful to have in your garden. Do be prepared for sticky fingers when you pull those flowers in, but that's when you know there's good medicine there, and it's that nice resin that you're getting. So join me tomorrow. Like I said, if you have any comments about whether you'd want it to be more at 10 a.m. Pacific or 12:30 p.m. Pacific, let me know, because I have an appointment at 11 and I won't be able to do it at that time. But I will be making that soup, and then I will also be showing you how to use calendula in kind of a tummy healing tea with a combination of a couple of other easy to grow or easy to find herbs in your own garden. Okay, so I will hopefully see you tomorrow. Until then, health and joy.